Am absolutely delighted to welcome you to this event. The title itself grabbed me, trying not to lose my mind. Yes, please. Um, Absolutely. And as I imagine all of us know, there is no institution in this country that has a longer and more robust history of being a locus for resistance and a center of facing and healing from trauma than the Black Church. So I am really excited to hear what our distinguished panelists have to tell us today about that. And given that, I'm going to stop and let us get going. I'm going to introduce to you the Reverend Dr. Vanessa Lovelace, who is the Associate Dean of the seminaries and Associate Professor of Hebrew Bible, and our host for this evening. She'll center us with little prayer and introduce our distinguished leaders for the evening. So, Vanessa, please lead us in.
Thank you, Dean Ragsdale. Let us pray. God of our mothers and fathers, God who has brought us this far on the way, God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time to be together. We thank you for the technology that has allowed us to be together from near and far. And we just thank you for everyone who is here and participating in this webinar. God, we ask that you would center us, that you would center our spirits, and that you would be present and that the focus would be on you as we focus on your Black church and that you created in the crucible of the transatlantic slave trade and the antebellum slave period here in America. But God, that you have been with us and kept this church going all these many years. And so we give you thanks for the Black church. We give you thanks for those leaders in the Black church and for its members. We ask now that you would be with us in our time together, bless our presenters, our moderators, and we ask all this in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen. I would like to first remind you or say that this webinar is being recorded and you will receive an email notification later with the link and the password. Our moderators this afternoon are, before I introduce our moderators, I want to tell you a little bit about the program, the Advisory Council. So first, Lancaster Theological Seminary's mission is to educate and nurture leaders to join in God's redemptive and liberating work so that all creation may flourish. And the Lancaster Seminary African American Advisory Council's mission is to promote the academic success and flourishing of the seminary's Black students, assist with postgraduate placement, and promote the degree and certificate programs of the seminary. The council is composed of LTS students, alumni, and religious and civic leaders in the Lancaster community. I would like to thank the council for hosting this afternoon's webinar. And if there are any council members there, we know we can't see you, but we want to acknowledge you and thank you for being present with us this afternoon. And now our moderators this afternoon are Reverend Quentin Lawton Sr., first-year Master of Divinity degree student and licensed minister at Mount Olive Baptist Church, and the Reverend Dr. Diane Bogues, Senior Director and Joint Seminary Enrollment and Financial Aid Director at Lancaster Theological Seminary and Moravian Theological Seminary. Reverend Lawson earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology from Morgan State University, and Dr. Bogues earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Psychology from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, a Master of Divinity degree from Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from the Colgate-Rochester Crozer Divinity School. Let's welcome our moderators.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be one of your moderators. Quentin and I are both delighted to share in this important conversation about the Black church, which is rooted and grounded in hope and liberation, and of course, God's love. We have three dynamic, illustrious, wonderful women who are greatly prepared to share with us on this notion of what the Black church can do in terms of trauma and healing. And it is our pleasure now to introduce them to you. The first is the Reverend Dr. Jamie Eady. She is the founder of and CEO of Thoughtful Transitions, an organization committed to fostering a safe space for individuals to process grief and loss without shame, especially those whose voices are silenced and whose experiences are disenfranchised. Dr. Eady is a skilled thanatologist, theologian, clinically trained chaplain, certified trauma professional, certified death doula, grief doula, and educator. She is an adjunct professor of pastoral theology here at Lancaster Theological Seminary, Colgate Rochester Crozier Divinity School, and Columbia Theological Seminary. She continues to support the formation of Liberated and Liberation for All, pursuing pastoral theologians, chaplains, and holistic spiritual care practitioners. She is an author of Getting Naked to Get Free. She's a well sought after speaker and curator of the Ratchet Grief Project. She is an amazing spiritual entrepreneur. And as you get to know her in this brief 1 hour time, we are so happy that Dr. Eady is with us. Quentin?
Hello to everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing the Reverend Sherry Lupton. Reverend Sherry L. Lupton resides in Lancaster County, Lancaster, PA. She is a graduate from Millersville University with a BA in social work. After 20 years of working for the Office of Juvenile Probation, she retired in 2018. She has held several positions, beginning with intensive probation officer, restorative justice coordinator, and supervision. She was instrumental in coordinating efforts to reduce racial and ethnic disparities affecting youth of color in the juvenile justice system. Reverend Lupton received her certificate of ordination, Goodman Memorial Baptist Church, Harrisburg, and became a member of beloved St. John Evangelistic Church, Philadelphia, where she is the director of Ministry of Comfort. She was instrumental in implementing a 6-week grief and loss support group. The recipient of numerous community awards for service to the Lancaster community and state of Pennsylvania. Reverend Lupton is the host of Reset with Reverend Sherry on TCP Media. Reset is a Christ-centered ministry that seeks to encourage, empower, and inspire. Reset is changing, adjusting, shifting, and transformation.
Thank you. I just want to go back to Dr. Eady. She is a graduate with her Doctor of Ministry from the Colgate Rochester Crozier Divinity School. Now let me introduce to you the Reverend Brittany Powell, who's originally from Atlanta, Georgia, where she earned her Master of Divinity from the Morehouse School of Religion at the Interdenominational Theological Center following graduation from Spelman College with a BA in political science. She's endorsed for ministry through the Progressive National Baptist Convention. Reverend Powell's, where she's affectionately known as Reverend B or Pastor B, is a certified educator with the Association of Clinical Pastoral Education, and she got this certification in May 2023. She received her certification training at the Johns Hopkins Hospital and the Penn State Health in Hershey. She was recently appointed as the certified chaplain educator for Mary Washington Hospital in Northern Virginia. While in Hershey, Reverend Powell served as a resource board for Alder Health and Community Clinic that serves the LGBTQIA community. Reverend Powell is a proud member of the Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and she is a part of the Kappa Omicron Sigma chapter of the Greater Harrisburg area. Without further ado, we will get started in our questions, and you will get to hear from our illustrious panel. Quentin, you'd like to start us off?
Yes. So we have some questions prepared for our panelists that we hope will lead to an informative and insightful conversation. After about a half an hour, we'll open the floor for questions from the audience. If you have a question, please put them in the Q&A section on Zoom. Following that, we will allow for some closing remarks from our panelists and Associate Dean Lovelace. So I will begin with the first question. Black Americans are more likely to rely on their faith or pastor to treat their mental wellness than to seek licensed mental health professionals outside of the church. Why is this? And I would like to start this question with Dr. Edie, because looking at your bio, you definitely have certifications and the experience. So I would love to hear from you first.
Thank you to both of our deans. It's been a pleasure to be invited to this space. To our moderators, thank you. And thank you for that question. I think there are a lot of reasons why we go to the pastor rather than to mental health professionals. I want to start with, this is a system that has diagnosed people of African descent as mentally ill for wanting their freedom, right? So if we start there, that there is, you were mentally ill, right? Drapetomania, that you were mentally ill for wanting your freedom. So if we have that sort of as the foundation, and then you look at this field that is dominated by people who don't look like us. Now, yes, numbers of Black psychologists and psychotherapists, licensed professional counselors, social workers is growing, but in general, right, many of them don't look like us. And so wanting to receive support that is, one, culturally attuned, that does not stigmatize you for needing support, you will likely be able to go to a pastor who can provide some sort of emotional support, maybe not mental health support, right? But some sort of emotional support that may not be stigmatized because it's happening within that church space. So I want to say that first. And then we don't want to be pathologized, right? I don't want to seek mental health support and then be stigmatized and pathologized because I needed that kind of support. We've seen research that shows when Black folks go to mental health professionals that for something that might be, say, depression or somewhere where you need some support, they will look at it as a behavioral issue. So if we look at even our children, right, we can't get the mental health support because what is seen in those spaces is the issue is behavior and not mental health. So we may not even be getting the support that we need. And then lastly, I think that we rely on faith, on God, on religion, on our pastors to heal us because in some ways, that's what we've been taught through the generations, right? That the healing takes place in the church. So I think those are some of the reasons why, we go to pastor rather than outside to licensed mental health professionals. Of course, we can talk about insurance, right? Availability. We can talk about that as well, but I think those are some of the reasons why.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edie. Reverend Brittany or Reverend Sherry, would you like to chime in on the question?
I would say just building upon what Jamie has said, and I just want to say it's great to be here with all of you, and thank you for the moderators for the introduction. I would essentially say I'm thinking about my mother in this, who straight up says who tells me all I need is Jesus. I don't need a therapist. So I'm sure most of us have heard that terminology or heard that from someone when you invited them to go to therapy. So, building on what Jamie already said, the Black church was really the ecocenter, the ecosystem of the Black community. So it was the place in which you learned, the place where you became educated. They name and mention I'm a graduate of Spelman. Spelman is a Baptist seminary. It started the foundation. Spelman and Morehouse were both founded in the church. So these things, the church has been the essential place for banking, for getting your needs met. So it is just normal and traditional and historical for Black people to get their psychological, social needs met from the church. However, the church has limitations. Pastors are not necessarily required to have that sociological degree in order to be a church leader. So it definitely has created limitations, and also building upon, as a chaplain educator and building upon, again, what Jamie shared about connection around psychiatrists and the statistics, though Black people are moving into these fields, they're still very low statistic. 7% of Black people are marriage and family therapists. There's a theory that I use with my teaching with students. It's called relational culture theory. And we talk about connections and disconnections. And so if I'm choosing a therapist that I can't, and that particular therapist is doesn't look like me, then there's a disconnect. You know, will this therapist be able to understand me? Will this therapist be able to understand my trauma? Especially if my trauma is rooted in white supremacy. How do I work that out with a white therapist? I think that's some of the questions that people have. Mike Epps was just talking about, Mike Epps special just came out on Netflix, and he was talking about working his therapy out with his white therapist. That's the first thing that I came out. I wonder how that relationship is really going as a Black man who experienced trauma. I mean, how do you work that out? I'm not saying that white therapists cannot do that, but I'm saying there's a level of connection that has to be established first for you to trust the process. And sometimes when you have that, being that Black therapist is still a very small group of mental health professionals, then I can imagine there's a huge disconnect with the Black community seeking out therapy in that way.
Thank you, Reverend Powell. We have a few minutes left for this question. Reverend Lupton, would you like to chime in? Do you need me to read the question again? I saw you just came in. I don't know if you heard it.
Yes, you could restate it, please.
Okay, no problem. Black Americans are more likely to rely on their faith or pastor to treat their mental wellness than to seek licensed mental health care professionals outside of the church. Why is this?
Yeah, I agree with the other guests had said. And first of all, thank you for allowing me to be on today. But I do agree that there are limitations for many of our pastors. They have different backgrounds. But I think one of the things that we could do is that the pastors have access and know of the mental health providers in their area. I think that would be really welcoming for the pastors to even know them by name, if there were referral sources for them or for the administrator in the church, that there is some type of relationship. So the pastor has first knowledge of these different mental health professionals and could refer them and have a sense of confidence in the mental health professional. Even have them at different sessions, informational sessions, leaflets or brochures. So even though that many pastors may have a limitation, but they could at least seek them in the community.
Thank you so much. We're going to the next question. I'll pass it over to Dr. Bove.
Thank you so much. That's just building the stage of why the church and why the refusal to go get help. And Reverend Sherry, you began to segue nicely into the next question, in that given the reluctance that people have, to go seek help from a licensed mental health care professional, what are some ways, in addition to what Reverend Sherry Lupton said, and of course you can add on, Reverend Lupton, what are some ways that the Black church helps its members and the community confront mental trauma and mental illness in a way that brings hope and wellness to those who are suffering? So it's not just get some help, but how do we go ahead and bring hope to the situation so that people know that they're not in a setting that just will never ever be as better than what is the dire situation at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I believe if our pastors would preach the word, looking at some of our biblical people in the Bible, individuals that experience trauma, that experience depression, that experience grief and loss. I always like to go to the book of Ruth and looking at Naomi, looking at her journey of grief, looking at how God never left her, looking at Ruth, who was her promise, who was the promise from God, looking at that support that she found in her community. So I believe that if pastors from the pulpit chancel area would talk about trauma, would talk about the violence, and many of them do talk about the violence, talk about domestic violence, talk about the sexual abuse, and looking at the hand of God, how God never left them or will leave them. But there are services here in the community that, along with your faith, and not any judgment of where is your faith, how deep is your faith, or looking at them, you need to pray more, no judgment. And I believe that that is the area in which we should move forward.
Thank you, Reverend Lupton. Dr. Edie or Pastor P, if you would like to say a little more. And I also would like you to put into play this notion that when in some churches and some places, faith spaces, it would be like, well, those issues that you raised, Reverend Lupton, are demons. They're spirits.
Yes.
And they need to be cast out. So in light of that,
yes,
as well as what else can churches, the Black church, do and their leaders to help bring about hope and wellness for those who are suffering?
Yeah, that's first we have to check ourselves. So the question that you just mentioned about demons, and if I as pastor think that depression is a demon, or that needing mental health support is a demon, I need a new awareness first, right? Because we can't say that church is going to embody holistic wellness if the pastor sees it as demons. So checking ourselves, what do I believe about mental wellness, right? And some pastors might fall on the side where they believe it's a demon. Those who don't, then naming it and normalizing these kinds of conversations in our faith context, right? So I need to normalize mental wellness discussions, and I need to be intentional about cultivating a church culture that supports holistic wellness, right? So I need to look at what are our organizational policies, what are the rules, and how do we operate in this church? Every organization has a culture. Does our culture speak to sort of this embodied wellness that includes the kind of support that we might need that is beyond the church walls? So that's one way.
Yes.
Partnering with mental health, licensed mental health professionals. And I would even go a little step further, because I am not an LPC. I am not a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a clinically trained chaplain and a thanatologist. So partnering with licensed mental health professionals, but also let's extend what healing looks like. Partnering with chaplains, partnering with thanatologists and doulas, partnering with this sort of holistic way of looking at wellness. We have to partner with folks to bring the kind of education and resources we need to the congregation. I'll say hire people. What I find is that sometimes folks will, I'm gonna say it. So folks will do a stewardship workshop, and they will be ready to pay top dollar to that particular speaker for a stewardship workshop, but would want, and I'm gonna just say me, not necessarily me, but will want me to do a mental wellness grief workshop for free, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying we're in this for money, but I am saying if we believe in total wellness and holistic wellness, then we will be willing to put our resources in the spaces that also speak to these other wellness areas. And then lastly, expanding our hermeneutical lens, right? To identify ways that we can lift up mental wellness in our sermons, in our classes. What does it look like to talk about to talk about Jeremiah? What does it look like to talk about Isaiah? What does it look like to talk about Paul? What does it look like let's talk about these folks and really get underneath Job's wife. You know, I know what I look like when I'm grieving. If I had just lost everything too, I'm mad at God, and I might say some words that don't sound nice either, right? So can we shift our hermeneutical lens to do this? And some of that, I believe, is on seminaries, this sort of theological education, where I had to take 3 preaching classes to get my MDiv. I did not have to take 3 sort of caring, right? Pastoral care, pastoral theology. That was not a requirement. Some places have 1 pastoral theology requirement, but you got to take 3 and 4 preaching classes. I'm not sure that our intentions, our focus is in the right spot. I'm gonna stop because I know there's more to add.
Yeah. I Jamie, I appreciate that, lifting up pastoral care professional as a counseling discipline. So I really appreciate that. Chaplaincy, spiritual care are counselors, and partnering. One way to partner is having churches have professional chaplains do that spiritual care work for them, who have the time to actually do that training thoroughly, like yourself. And so just to add a little bit more on there, especially in the Pennsylvania area, there's an organization called HEAL PA. It is actually a part of the governor's work. It's part of his missions, essentially, is to have trained professionals. Anybody can become trauma informed. HealPA.org right now is where you can become certified as a trauma informed professional. It's for free. It's for free. And it's on their website right now. And it's a mission of the state of PA. So healpa.org. So I would say definitely look on that, look up that organization. And the other thing I want to add, just to what Diane and Jamie have already said, and Reverend Lupton, is call the demon by name. These demons, these legions have names. Not only do they have names, they have stories. They have a narrative that is really deeply rooted in some trauma. And that means some family loss, some grief, some pain, something is rooted that has hurt or created some type of dysfunction within themselves and within their family community. So it's essential that a part of spiritual care is to make sure that providing spiritual care is to make sure that your basic needs of your members are being met, to make sure that they are safe. If you have a member that is crying emotionally over and over again, I will be curious enough to check that out. Actually have a conversation, ask what's going on, and maybe do that in relationship with those who are professionally trained. And the last thing I would say is that sign up. If you're not, sign up. If you never heard of chaplain education or spiritual care education, the VA offers CPE for free. So that's clinical pastoral education. The VA offers CPE for free for ministers who want that level of counseling and training. And there's a VA CPE program currently right now in the Harrisburg area for those who are part of Lancaster Theological Seminary. Also, Penn State Hershey has a lower fee for CPE applications. And so an LTS is right there in the organization that provides CPE. CPE is going to give you the training that is necessary so that you can be aware of the dynamics that are happening in the families that you're serving.
Could I just say one thing? I loved what both of you said. And when you, Brittany, said naming those demons, that's really important for our congregation, and not only naming the demons, but naming those and talking about those family secrets that we have in our Black community. I think that's important so that we can be loose of all that bondage, of all the depression that follows from one generation to another. So I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Quentin.
I just gotta say, I'm enjoying this. Dr. Edie, you really you kind of hit a nerve for me in a good way, because too often in a Black church we focus on preaching and not healing. That really just blessed me. All right, next question. You each bring a distinct approach to Black mental health and the Black church. Could you describe how your area of speciality helps with the Black mental illness and trauma? And I'll start with Reverend Powell.
Wow. You know, I knew you'd start with me, but I have to have a confession. So this is a safe. I believe this is a safe space. So I would say that CPE. So I'm an educator. I'm a clinical pastoral educator, and I would say that CPE initially, when it first started, did not have in its mindset to train African American preachers. So it was not something that was. It was an elite group of ministers who created this organization and created this without us in mind. This is CPE gives you the opportunity to be in these institutions. Chaplains work everywhere, from serving the military to serving hospital systems to serving governmental agencies. And so it did not have Black mental health and trauma in mind, because these positions were not even affordable or even opened up for Black ministers. So essentially, even today, there is still a very small number of Black trained educators or even Black trained chaplains. And being that most Black Baptist churches don't actually require ministers to have a degree trained, have an MDiv. And in order to become a chaplain or a chaplain educator, you need to have at least a master's of divinity. You know, so it has actually somewhat, I would say, created in some ways trauma, because of ways in which it has limited us the ability to be a part of it. And so, but those doors are changing, and the door is open. And I want to invite Black ministers, because I don't see enough Black students receiving this type of training. And it's so important. It is so necessary. I can tell you how it's helped me in my own personal life as someone who's an adult child of alcoholics, who's a child of the 80s, who did not have, who parents, I was a parentified child who had their own trauma, and they sought out drugs at the time to help them heal. And though they were part of the Black church, I grew up very much in Black church, and my families were part of Black church. They had a level of disconnect in their own lives. And so my mom would say today that Jesus helped her kick her habit. And so the church has helped her in recovery. It has helped, CPE has helped me to talk about those hard parts of my story in ways in which I couldn't find safety within my family. So then it helped me to trust authority, because I didn't have authority figures that I trusted in my childhood. So CPE goes through past, present trauma, so that when you're interacting with members, say if I was a parish minister or if I'm providing care to someone, that I don't become reacted. I don't, or have a reaction due to the fact that, you know, I didn't trust authority figures growing up. So that essentially, the training has given me the tools that are necessary and needed to manage my own triggers and reaction. And I think that's the blessing of clinical pastoral education. It equips the minister with the ability to provide care in a way that removes themselves from harming other people.
Wow, that was good. That was real good. Dr. Edie, Reverend Lupton, anything you would like to share on your area expertise, what you bring to this topic?
That's
I'd like to, oh, go ahead. Oh, I'd like to say, my background is in social work. My undergrad is in social work. I have a MDiv also, which I had to do 500 hours of CP training, and I thought it was the best training that I received, one of the best trainings that I received in ministry. But I was a drug and alcohol therapist. I was a juvenile probation officer, restorative justice coordinator, supervisor. I worked with families in the city. I ran the city department for juvenile probation. So I come with a lot of different experience, and I'm an ordained minister. So out of what I do at church, I am the director of Ministry of Comfort. I oversee grief and loss. A lot of it comes from my own experience of grief and loss, along with all those years working in the field. Because when you work with people, you have to look at yourself and heal from your own trauma. And so eventually, over those 30 years, I had a lot of years to look at myself, to look at addictions in my family, to look at why, of being associated with certain people or in relationships. If you are going to be honest and want to heal so that you could help others and be a blessing to others. So that's what I bring. And I bring a lot of experiences, and that's what how I could relate to the congregation, or in the past relate to my clients.
Yeah, wow, thank you. I need to chat with you, Reverend Lumpton. I didn't know we were that close, so I need to chat with you. But I will say, I was the 13-year-old who witnessed a domestic violence or intimate partner violence incident in the street and told my mom, let me out the car. I need to go see if the woman is okay. Right. And my mother, God bless her, was like, you're not getting out this car. I'm getting out the car, Mom. And something let her, she let me out the car. We can talk about whether or not that was the best move, but I got out the car. And I went to see about this woman who was just, hit in the face in the middle of the street. Right. I am that 14-year-old. I am the 17-year-old who attended workshops at formerly called Women Organized Against Rape. They recognized that more than women can be raped, so the name has changed, but that was what it was called in the 1980s, early 90s. So I entered into, adulthood carrying my own traumatic experiences, but also a deep desire to be with people and to bring some sort of healing modality into their life, their space, right? As I got older and sort of older, 19, right, answering this call to ministry, I apprenticed. We don't have a lot of apprentices anymore, right? I apprenticed under the leadership of a licensed professional counselor who was the minister of pastoral care and counseling at my church. When she left, Dr. Cheryl McMillan, I always name her Cheryl McMillan Duckett today, psychotherapist. So I spent 15 years serving under the person who was minister of pastoral care and counseling at our church, who we had a nonprofit that was, right, professional counselors work. I was not, but I got to be and do grief work, right? They said, Jamie, we got to know our lane. So I'm saying all of that to say, one, I know my lane. I am a thanatologist. I am a grief specialist. And so there is and I work in trauma, right? Licensed trauma professional. So I have a lane that I work in. And so that thanatology background brings, and thanatology is simply the scientific study of death, dying, grief, and bereavement. That is where I sit and love, and it's the space that I'm in. I bring that into faith-based experiences, so in the church, in the world, but I bring that background of, one, recognizing that I've had my own traumatic experiences, right? And I needed support beyond prayer. Prayer's good. So was preaching. I love preaching, but I needed support beyond prayer. For some people, that might be a professional counselor, and for others, it might be a prescription. So I recognize that early on, right? So I bring that sort of early awareness to this space, and then thinking about what Brittany said, what educator Brittany said, right? Is CPE. I have 4 units of CPE, and one of the main things that it worked through with me was just that self-reflection, right? Because sometimes we enter into these spaces as pastors, preachers, and there may not be, I'm not saying there may not be enough space and downtime for self-reflection, right? To how am I approaching people? So that CPE experience of reflecting on my presence when I'm around people. Am I on the journey with them, or am I forcing them on the journey with me because I have a desired end for them to get to, right? I had to work through, I'm not fixing people, I'm supporting people. I had to work through those things. So I bring this, for me, this lens of openness, a specialty in that grief, that death, dying, grief, and bereavement space, the clinical education that chaplains receive into our faith spaces. And I support people through grief, loss, death, dying, and trauma. Mental illness is not necessarily my lane. So if I'm working with someone and it is not in my lane, I bring the wherewithal, the wisdom, and the humility to refer. So that's what I bring into the space.
Thank you for that, Dr. Jamie. For all of you, you made a nice segue into our next question, which, as one who deals with people who are answering their calls and entering into theological education, we do a lot of vocational discernment, and oftentimes people think there are only like 2 or 3 areas you can go into after you finish seminary, or if you're going to seminary, you're going to be a pastor, you're going to be, finally chaplains have risen up, and a few other things. And so if you could share a little more about, like, specifically, what degrees, if there's any additional experiences, or if someone says, oh, I want to work in this, but I don't know what area to go, right? What would you tell them?
I'll start. So how I started in my career, I was just serving in church. I was already licensed and ordained, and I was doing prison ministry. And so I was in the prisons and talking to inmates. And one day I met the actual chaplain, and I just asked, what did you have to do this in the institution? And they shared with me that they went to seminary. And so I would say, don't be afraid of school. Now, when I first got as a licensed and ordained minister in the Baptist church, and I believe you won't believe it was a Southern Baptist church, but it was autonomous. Baptist is autonomous. So this particular pastor wasn't against ordaining women. However, he was against school. And so as soon as I told him I was going to school, he said, if Brittany starts talking crazy, then, we know why. And so the first thing that I want to say, let's debunk the myth that school is something that we should be afraid of within our community. There are things that shift and change, but there are things just that are still remained. There are things that did not shift or change. My faith have not shifted and changed, therefore, because I went to seminary. That's a personal lived experience that I have. So I want to debunk that myth that school is something that you should be afraid of. So education, I've always thought that education is the key to success. So that was something that was in the flag of my kindergarten class that has just remained with me. So I would say, let's not be afraid of education. 2, I would say, so go to seminary. If you're really interested in becoming a spiritual care professional, take pastoral care classes. Don't take the preaching class, all the preaching classes that they offer. I went over to other classes and took pastoral care classes at other institutions. So that helped build some of my pastoral care resume. And then anyone could apply to become a chaplain intern if you're already licensed and ordained and have a degree in Masters of Divinity. I would say some CPE centers will take you as an intern without a Masters of Divinity. So even though you see a barrier there, sometimes picking up the phone and actually calling will actually benefit you. In our world, sometimes you see on the resume it says don't call. I would say that is not necessarily true when it comes to CPE. So I say,
Thank you, Reverend.
Okay.
Oh,
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were just about. We're gonna.
No, we're good. I probably was
Okay.
too much, so yes.
No. Thank you so much. We want to move ahead because we want to make sure we have a couple minutes for people to ask questions. So very quickly, Dr. Jamie or Reverend Sherry, if you would like to share on that. What any other words of advice for training, specialization, or moving into this realm?
I started seminary later in my career. By that time, I was in 25 years in my career as working with social services. But the benefit of going to seminary is because I experienced different professors that pushed you. And especially with CPE, if you was someone like myself that was just frustrated in a church, you didn't know what you wanted to do, CPE, you will find what you want. You will, in those classes that you have to take, the self-reflection, always writing about yourself, you will know yourself. I took grief counseling, the Black church. I have a minor in the Black church. I think that was one of the best things that I could have ever done, pastoral care. And the last thing, church in society, letting you know that church is just not in the four walls or in the walls of the church, that you could go into society and minister and do different programming and create opportunities for the community.
Thank you. Dr. Jamie?
30 seconds. Volunteer. We've already heard about school. Ask questions. If there's someone doing something that you're interested in, reach out and ask questions. Use it as an opportunity to apprentice. And I think all of the other answers have already been given.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for that we're being a little more brief. 1 hour goes by so fast. Just do want to say that seminaries do provide the training necessary. Again, seminary, like in a Master's of Divinity degree, will just give you a kind of a buffet, a plethora of experiences in the 5 disciplines of history, ethics, theology, Bible, and the practice of ministry. If you have a special bent, then you need to take more classes in that area or get more training, conferences, and the like. I want to pass it on to Quentin for the last question that we have prepared, and then Dean Lovelace will come back.
Okay, I know we, like Dr. Bo said, time's moving fast. So the last question, if you can touch on it briefly. Some pastors are reluctant to refer their members to licensed mental health professionals. Some even go as far as to blame the member or the devil for the person's mental trauma and illness. How do we encourage these pastors to support the work of mental health professionals by referring their members or even acknowledging that there's a need?
I think it goes back to everything that we have said earlier, partnering, collaborating with those mental health professionals. There is the Black therapist in Central Pennsylvania. So there is a resource. Invite them into your ministry days that you have. Invite them to speak with your congregation. Invite them. They live right here in the community. So I think that the church should reach out to them and invite them in and find out more before we say don't go to them. I think that I think it's important that they are culturally sensitive to our background and to what we come from, where we come from. I think that they should be also how possibly slavery affected us, racism, structural racism. So it's important that I think that pastors have full knowledge of what the mental health professionals offer.
Yeah, I'll go quickly. Thank you, Reverend Sherry. One, I think the more we have these conversations, the more it invites people to think a bit more about what they're doing in their particular spaces. And I want to highlight something that Dr. Tanya Tinsley, talked about and does, right? She is one who has a DMin, who preaches, but is also, PhD, is maybe psychology, psychotherapy, right? So she brings both of these, and there are, I'm not gonna say lots, there are other ministers who are now bringing in this sort of mental health aspect because they recognize the importance of it in their church spaces. So within community, there's something about us calling each other into these types of conversations that can encourage someone who is not doing this work or sees something as a demon. It's a way that we can do this in community to call them into discussion and to help them expand their thinking. And then again, as we said, seminaries, the way we educate, bringing this out in some of our seminary education as well.
Reverend Powell, did you want to touch on that really fast?
I think what has been said is enough. And my last thing is just advocation to apply for ACPE, for CPE.
All right, thank you.
Quentin, if I could just jump in for 1 second. There are some questions and answers, and people are asking for some resources. If you wouldn't mind typing in the
yes, I'm trying to answer them as I go.
Yes, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to go into the segment of questions from the audience. So we're going to now turn it over to Associate Dean Lovelace.
Thank you, Reverend Lawton. So the first question I want to pose is, how will we get to a place where more Black students apply for CPE? What do I do as a white chaplain to encourage Black students to do CPE?
I think, Dr. Lovelace, I was responding to that right now in the chat, but I really do think it's just about sharing information. Like, I didn't know about CPE until I met the prison chaplain and who shared with me about what was necessary to become a chaplain in the prisons or in the institutions. So I think there's still a growing awareness around this eligibility, because again, it was something that was locked out. So I think, if your pastor is between 70 or 80s, this is something that they may have known of, but was locked out. So I'm curious about, what does it look like engaging more Black churches around this? And we are doing that work. A lot of us are marketing to Black ACPE centers. So I think if you come in contact with a Black minister, ask the question, have you heard of CPE? Here's an opportunity for some training around these things. Also view acpe.edu. And right now I know a lot of Black educators such as Danielle Bihuro, who are going to National Baptist conventions, sharing more about what ACPE has to offer. So we are doing, as Black educators, are doing more on our end to make sure that our endorsing bodies have the information. So
I also think that CPE is an opportunity, particularly for African-American women that may experience problems moving through our traditional Black churches. So with CPE and becoming a chaplain, you have the opportunity to do ministering. You have an opportunity to meet with different patients and families. You will interface with medical professionals. So you going through seminary, you will use a lot of your educational experience by becoming a chaplain. My 500 hours at Lancaster General Hospital, Penn Medicine, I mean, it was phenomenal of what I learned. So I would encourage, particularly I will encourage young women going through seminary.
Thank you. I'm going to share these two questions that were in the Q&A, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Corley, who keeps raising his hand, to unmute himself and to ask his question. So as a pastor in Central PA, my ministry is predominantly with the LGBTQIA community, and I'm very aware of the difficulty of finding mental health care professionals acceptable of the LGBTQIA folks. Where do I find a list of Black mental health care professionals that I can use for referrals for my Black LGBTQIA members and attendees?
I don't know that I don't have a list that is specific to our queer and trans siblings. But there are some places where you can find just like Black Girl Therapy. I can't, the name is escaping me, right? Black Girl Therapy. So that like you may go there and maybe find that you can find a specialized list for our queer siblings. I have not found I don't have a list that only speaks to that community. I just have a list that speaks to Black folks, sort of all encompassing. But this is a good question. And now I'm going to find a list that we can have.
Yeah, I would say psychology today. You can Google therapy. I think you can Google Black therapists and see a list. But in Central PA, as someone who lived in Central PA for some time, there is an LGBTQIA center that is centered for therapy. I don't know if they have a Black therapist necessarily on staff. But I do know there is one who speaks to that need. And also Alder Health in Harrisburg is also an LGBT center, and they are accepting and affirming of people of color as a former board member, is a safe space, and they do have a therapist on staff there. So I would say that organization, the executive director is a Black woman. And so there you can find safety there and mental health treatment at Alder Health.
Yeah. And I'll add this last one, Walnut Psychotherapy Center here in Philadelphia area, Walnut Psychotherapy Center. My friend she's on and she's sent me the text and said, don't forget them. So Walnut Psychotherapy Center, LGBTQ plus affirming in
yes. And there's a trans, oh gosh, Dr. Lovelace, I probably can send some more resources in an email to you. Maybe we can send it out. But there is an organization in Philadelphia where they have therapy on staff to speak to the needs of LGBT and trans. I'm just slipping the name of the center.
Thank you. How do we help pastors and leaders who also have trauma issues that they need for help with their own mental health care, and then they can better minister to the needs of members? So how do you help the pastors help themselves before they can heal?
Wow, that's a good question.
I mean, I was with grief and shame. Like, I think shame comes up, there's a lot of pressure that preachers have on themselves. Like they have to have it right. And there's a lot of pressures that congregations put on pastors to have it right. And I would invite pastors to kind of break away from that mode of always feeling to need to be right. And, you get to have a down day, you get to not be okay. And I think it's like, how do you take care of yourself? So I just invite pastors to take on the humanity of themselves and really just and sit with that and allow them to take care of yourself. You have this model, we talk about self-care a lot. And so a part of it is just recognizing, acknowledging that I am not well. And it's important for me to take care of my mental health before serving others.
I think that's very important of acknowledging that I am not well, that I need help. I would think of, I don't know any names, but of pastor associations, of meetings that they go to, that they find a sacred space where they are able to talk about different issues that they are experiencing. I would hope, but I don't know, that at those different associations that they offer brochures or links or places where they could, referrals where they could go. I know it was always said, a pastor has a pastor. So reaching those senior pastors and informing them, educating them so that they, when they mentor to other pastors, to younger pastors, that they would have that information. But I think it all begins, like with everybody else, of mentoring, and that it's okay. And I believe that we are moving towards that, where men, that it is okay for a man to cry, that it is okay for a man to express themselves. So I would go back to pastor associations for that help.
Well, thank you to our panelists. We have reached that point where we're at the hour. Again, this webinar is being recorded and will be saved soon for viewing. So look for that email with the link and the password. Let's thank our panelists and moderators. I would like to thank Meg Graham in marketing and communications for getting the word out, and to the Moravian University IT team for setting up the webinar. Thank you again for attending today's webinar, Trying Not to Lose My Mind. If you would like to know more about our certificates and degree programs, please contact Dr. Bogues at dbogues, B-O-G-U-E-S, at lancasterseminary.edu. And finally, thank you again to our hosts, the LTS African American Advisory Board. Please be safe and be well. Thank you.
Thank you.